dark night, she reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star. She opened the earth, walking with blood-soaked feet. She challenged the whip, the gun, the knife. She challenged the fire, pulled from the bodies of slaves, made into laws, prisons, and courts. Screaming white-hot flames and agony, she challenged millions of headhunters, dragging and ripping apart impossible tender moments of time, shipping vessels of history, ancient history, destroying the fabric, the godlike claw of destiny, of a people, with a gun, a knife, a cannon, building the hideous wall of blood called slavery.
Greetings, good afternoon, and welcome back. CNN has reported that the Trump administration just doubled the tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum doubled to 50% as of 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time yesterday. A move cheered by the beleaguered American steel industry, but worrisome to sectors that heavily use the metals from car makers to can manufacturers. And it's that can issue that really impacts me, as my question is, what's going to be the impact on the price of a can of beer? What's the real impact here to the average consumer? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they occur in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historical context in which most events take place. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which they occur, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that are impacting the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is, according to CNN, the jump in import taxes is the latest salvo in President Trump's trade war, part of a broad range of tariffs he has levied since February. But the steel tariffs are especially significant to him and to his political base. It's a symbol of once iconic U.S. manufacturing that has since fallen on hard times. So what I'd like to try to do just right now for a few minutes is try to separate the symbolism from the reality, or let's see if we can separate some of the wheat from the chaff. And we had advertised that we were going to be joined today by none other than Greg Palast. And right now we're having some technical difficulties. So while we're trying to work through those difficulties, let me see if I can put a little meat on this bone and try to provide some clarity to this, and then we'll go into some other issues. I think one of the things that is important to always keep in mind, particularly as it relates to this steel tariff issue, is that American steel manufacturing, and I'll use U.S. Steel as a generic term, not the name of an American company, that U.S. Steel for generations was the symbol of the once iconic U.S. manufacturing infrastructure. And we know that over time, steel manufacturing and steel production, particularly coming from the United States, has fallen on incredibly hard times. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I think post World War II, the United States has not kept up with the technological advances in steel manufacturing. So what wound up happening is European countries, Japan, the Japanese countries, Japan, they, as the United States, helped to rebuild Europe after the Marshall Plan. The infrastructure that was created, the manufacturing plants that were built, were technologically further advanced than the United States. And they, in many regards, have kept up with that advancement. In fact, remember, Japan wanted to buy and may still be trying to buy U.S. Steel. So because of American arrogance, thinking that, we basically were the leader in the manufacturing of steel for so long that no one would ever surpass us, that our dominance in the industry would forever reign. And now we find that, like so many other elements of American manufacturing, are falling by the wayside and to a great degree becoming less and less dominant, less and less significant. So this whole issue on Trump imposing tariffs on the import of steel is just another clear example of how, from a manufacturing perspective, the United States is failing. From an export perspective, the United States is failing, and failing dramatically. And so, a lot of the MAGA folks, a lot of his political base, they see this as just an incredibly bold and dynamic move on behalf of the Trump administration. And, this demonstrates that Donald Trump is taking the bull by the horns. Well, folks, that's not taking the bull by the horns. That's just flat out bull. Because, again, when you start looking at the price or the impact that this is going to have on auto manufacturing, this is going to have on construction, in terms of the steel beams that need to be made in order for the United States to build buildings. When you look at the impact that this aluminum tariff is going to have on a can of soda, on a can of beer, it's going to be dramatic. And indications are it's not going to be felt immediately, as in within the next month or so, but as we go further into the summer, I think you are going to see an increase in pricing on a number of things that are so wedded to the price of steel and the price of aluminum. And I think what also has to be always factored into the analysis that surrounds this issue and other tariff related issues as well, it didn't have to happen. It didn't have to happen. Like the conflict in Ukraine, the United States started the conflict and brought this upon itself. As you look at now these tariff issues, the United States, the Trump administration started this fight. It didn't have to be a fight. It started the fight. It brought it upon itself. Donald Trump does not understand diplomacy. That's not the way he operates. Or if you want to say that he does understand diplomacy, his methodology behind diplomacy is more gangsterism. I'm going to tell you what the terms of settlement will be, and you will agree to those terms. And then that's called capitulation, by the way, not negotiation. That's called capitulation. And after you agree to my terms, then we can sit down and talk about the parameters. We can talk about the presentation, but the fundamental elements, I am going to dictate those terms to you, and you will capitulate to those terms. Now, it's very important to understand. I said that this is how Donald Trump operates. That's how he has operated in the private sector. That's how he has operated with his businesses. That's also how the United States has operated so-called diplomatically over decades. We don't have to go that far back to the Biden administration and what's his name? The Secretary of State. Where'd the book go? Tony Blinken and his book Ally versus Ally. And I use this reference as an example because I think it's a very clear and recent example. If you recall back when Tony Blinken, then Secretary of State, was meeting with the Chinese delegation in Anchorage, Alaska. And they're sitting at the negotiating table, and Tony Blinken launches into this diatribe about how China is going to accept the terms that Tony Blinken is putting on the table. And the Chinese delegation did something that they rarely do. It is very out of character for them to display what they displayed. They walked away from the table, telling Tony Blinken very clearly, you obviously don't know who you're talking to. You don't know who you're dealing with. We're China. You can't sit here and tell us what you're going to do. You can't dictate to us what the terms of agreement are going to be. They told Tony Blinken, the world has changed. We are no longer what used to be referred to as the sick man of Asia. We're not those people anymore. And they got up and walked away, leaving Tony Blinken sitting there going, what the hell just happened? Where are they going? Why aren't they listening to me? So I use that as an example to demonstrate that has been, and Donald Trump continues down this reckless, freckless, silly path of thinking that you can dictate to the world what the terms of agreement are going to be, and that the world will just idly sit by and acquiesce, will sit back and just capitulate to the demands that you are placing on the table. Mark Schlaboda calls it, kneecap or knee breaking diplomacy. That, there was a time when the gangsters would come in and say, look, this is a lovely restaurant you have here, and we need you to pay us $300 a week as security for your restaurant and for your safety, or some very tragic things could befall you or your family, as in, we'll break your knee, we'll break your cousin's shoulder, and we'll burn your restaurant down. So pay us $300 and everything will be fine. Well, that's how the United States has operated for a very long time. But with the rise of BRICS, what we now find out is the world is no longer going to operate in that manner. The world is no longer going to capitulate to the dictates or the diktat of the United States. There's a new sheriff in town, and what was once the control of the United States has lost control of that process, and so that's no longer going to be. So it's going to be, we really just we have to sit back and watch and see how these so-called tariff negotiations go. Because remember, when Donald Trump came in to the second time, that he told us, oh, all of these countries are going to be running to the United States, and we've got 70 deals that we're negotiating right now. Well, Donald, how many of those deals have you gotten done? Because we haven't heard not one report of a deal getting done. We have not heard of the terms of not one deal being completed. You may have reached some deal with Britain, but don't know. We still don't know what the terms of that deal is, if there is in fact a deal. So he loves to bloviate. He loves to just to talk about the art of the deal and how look at what's happening. Well, look at what's happening, because as far as I can discern, there's nothing happening. Zhao Yun says, where did it go here? BRICS is really no better than the USA, especially when China being the economic leader of the bloc. Well, I'd love for you to present some evidence to support that statement, because all the evidence that I have proves that to be foolish. So would love to see, what you want to present to support that, other than just rhetoric that BRICS is really no better than the USA. Present some data, please, because that's not true. At least let me put it this way. As we talked about yesterday with Brother Tulio, the BRICS now represents, in terms of the population of the countries in BRICS, over half the world's population, and they are seeming to do very well for themselves within themselves. So again, telling me it is true, man, Keep that to yourself. That's the end of that conversation. Here's another very interesting development, and I think a very telling development. And this is from Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com. U.S. vetoes UN resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. I'm going to read that again. This was reported out yesterday afternoon. U.S. vetoes UN resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. The U.S. on Wednesday vetoed a resolution at the UN Security Council that called for an, quote, immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire, end quote, in Gaza, the release of Israeli captives, and the unrestricted flow of humanitarian aid into the besieged Palestinian territory. The U.S. was the only member of the 15-member Security Council that didn't vote in favor of the ceasefire. I'm going to read that again. The U.S. was the only member of the 15-member Security Council that didn't vote in favor of the ceasefire. The resolution was introduced by the 10 non-permanent members of the council: Algeria, Denmark, Greece, Guyana, Panama, Pakistan, South Korea, Sierra Leone, Somalia, and Slovenia. Quote, we believe this text reflects the consensus shared by all council members that the war in Gaza has to come to an immediate halt. All hostages must be immediately and unconditionally released, and civilians in Gaza must not starve, and must have full and unimpeded access to aid. What's the basis of that, United States? This piece continues. The U.S. and the 4 other permanent members, Russia, China, the UK, and France, all have veto power on the Security Council. The Biden administration vetoed several Gaza-related resolutions at the Security Council, but yesterday's vote marked the first time the new Trump administration used its veto power to block a Gaza ceasefire resolution on behalf of Israel. I'm going to read that one more time because I think this is very important. The U.S. and the 4 other permanent members, Russia, China, the UK, and France, all have veto power on the Security Council. The Biden administration vetoed several Gaza-related resolutions at the Security Council, but Wednesday's vote marked the first time the new Trump administration used its veto power to block a Gaza ceasefire resolution on behalf of Israel. There are a couple of things here. First of all, the resolution calls for the unrestricted flow of humanitarian aid into the besieged Palestinian territory. That is important because people need to really understand that when you engage in intentionally starving a population, that is what is known under international law as collective punishment. Collective punishment. Folks, that is a war crime as determined by the International Criminal Court and, I believe, by the International Court of Justice. That is unequivocally, I think that's the right word, that is without a doubt a war crime. And if the United States aids and abets and facilitates that action, the United States is complicit in the war crime. And since it is now the Donald Trump administration that is directing the U.S. ambassador to the UN to exercise the veto, I would then submit to you that Donald Trump is a war criminal, as Joe Biden, in his facilitation of the genocide in Gaza during his administration, he is a war criminal. There's another element, and that's not my opinion. I taught international law. I teach international law. I've read the Nuremberg trial documents, a lot of the Nuremberg trial documents, and I understand the logic on how that terminology, that determination that the generals in Germany were proven to be, through the Nuremberg trials, were proven to be war criminals, and how they're engaging in collective punishment against innocent Jews in Germany and gypsies in Germany and others in Germany was a war crime. Those very same tactics, those very same processes, those very same ideologies that we deemed to be so horrific, and rightfully so, in the extermination of Jews and gypsies and others in Germany, are now being applied to the Palestinians and to the Arabs in occupied historic Palestine. So it's not a stretch. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not anti-Semitism. It's just a very simple very simple understanding of international law. And I'd love for you all to tell me, what you all think of this. And I'm going to read this one more comment, and then I think I'm pretty much done with this exchange. Zhao Yun, BRICS is not what the world needs, not if we want a fairer and more just world. Again, that's just that's chatter. Again, no evidence. That's just chatter. And when over half of the world's populations are part of this organization, and other countries are looking to join BRICS, they're looking to join BRICS for a reason. And I think the reasons that they're looking to join BRICS are in direct opposition to American hegemony, in direct opposition to dollarization, and direct opposition to what the IMF and the World Bank, the usury interest rates and the usury conditions that are attached to IMF and World Bank loan conditions, that I don't think that's not too hard to debate. So again, that's my last engagement with that exchange, because that I just can't see. Clifford asks, can you ask Greg Palast about his take on tariffs since he went to the University of Chicago when Milton Friedman was there? Well, that Clifford, that was definitely one of the plans, or one of the questions that I had planned to ask him. And as soon as if we're able to work out this conflict, we'll get him on to be able to ask. But it's important, Clifford, I'm glad you brought that up, because people need to understand that not only is Greg Palast, who, by the way, is a very good friend of mine, not only is Greg Palast an incredible investigative journalist, he's also a forensic economist. He he went to the University of Chicago, studied under Milton Friedman at the University of Chicago. And so, again, not only is he a phenomenal journalist, he's also a forensic economist. And so he has a great command of the numbers. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to get this. And if we can't do it today, then we'll bring him on next week. But anyway, so folks, I'd love to get your take. Cherie, The Art of War and Other Eastern Philosophy. I'm not quite sure. Wait a minute. So let me see. Does anyone understand Lao Tzu? And you mentioned some other Chinese philosophers. What's interesting about Lao Tzu's ancient worldview, it's limited to Zaza. We can find it in Confucius. We can find it in every thought that's taken root in China, concepts starting writing in the middle of the Shang dynasty, The Art of War and Other Eastern Philosophy. To that, Cherie, I would strongly suggest, because I'm not familiar with most of what you just asked, but I am quite familiar with Sun Tzu and The Art of War, and would strongly suggest that particularly those of us in the African American community that are constantly asking ourselves, what are we to do? Where are we to go? How are we to get there? Understanding The Art of War by Sun Tzu is a phenomenal place to start your analysis, as well as to start the development of an approach, the development of a strategy in terms of how to organize our community. Because The Art of War is of course, a phenomenal book in military tactics, but it's also just a phenomenal expression of organizational philosophy and how to strategically engage in conflict, whether that is hand-to-hand conflict, whether that is political conflict. The strategies, the philosophies that are articulated in The Art of War would serve us as a community incredibly well. And I'm trying to see, because I know I have it over here on my bookcase somewhere. Can't quickly put my hands on it. But with that being said, another great book, Cherie, don't know if you've read People's Army, People's War by General Giap from Vietnam. Cherie, you can let me know if you've ever read People's Army, People's War. Let me see. Is that an immediate response? I think it is. Yes, sir. So, oh no, I don't think you responded to my question. But if you haven't, folks, that's another phenomenal. Okay, no, you haven't. That's another phenomenal book. In fact, here's what I would suggest, folks, that you do. Start with The Art of War by Sun Tzu, because that's a fairly succinct, very brief, relatively brief read. And then in fact, let me be sure that that is the proper title. Because I can get it backwards sometimes. People's Army. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm sorry, I had it backwards. I usually get it backwards. People's War, People's Army, the Viet Cong Insurrection Manual for Underdeveloped Countries. People's War, People's Army, the Viet Cong Insurrection Manual for Underdeveloped Countries by General Vo, V-O, Nguyen, N-G-U-Y-N, Giap, G-I-A-P. Vo, I think it's pronounced Nguyen Giap. That is, again, a phenomenal book about organization, because General Giap was responsible for organizing the Vietnamese against the colonial powers in Vietnam. And so he explains very clearly, again, the subtitle of the book, the Viet Cong Insurrection Manual for Underdeveloped Countries. And he talks about the ideologies and what had to be disseminated and explained to the average farmer, for example, in terms of how to develop an insurrection against the colonist power, the colonial power. And so, folks, you start and this is what the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense did very early in their development. They read the writings of leaders and thinkers that were resisting colonial oppression, and they were able to take a lot of those concepts, a lot of those constructs, and then they were able to apply them to a strategy, to a plan, to politically empower the African American community. And we have lost sight of that. We have lost the understanding of the value of resistance. That's what Dr. King was about peaceful resistance to the dominant culture. And Robert Brown, thank you very much for that $20 super sticker. In fact, folks, let me take a minute and just to ask that, as you see on the scroll, joining the Connecting the Dots Club on YouTube. You can join the club. We desperately need more members. And Robert Brown, thank you so much for that $20 super sticker. Greatly appreciated. O.L. Griffin writes, People's War, People's Army, the Viet Cong Insurrection Manual. Yeah, thank you. I always get it backwards, but it's People's War, People's Army. And from a political development perspective, that's the mindset that we need to move towards, because that's the only, and Daniel says, makes sense, Wilmer. Thank you very much. And if Daniel Drazenovich says that makes sense, then I know I'm making sense. Look, if Daniel says I'm making sense, damn it, I'm making sense. So thank you, Daniel. But that's the mindset that we need to be moving towards, because that's how other cultures make progress in this country. A lot of times you'll hear, particularly I hear this particularly in the African American community. How is it that people from India can come to this country and buy up a whole bunch of Dunkin' Donuts franchises in our community? Why is it that Chinese people can come to blah 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 blah? We find a culture, pick a culture, and it applies. Well, some of it has to do with some of this has to do with understanding collective thought, operating as a collective, operating in unity. And so many individuals from other countries are able to come here, and they're able to coalesce with like-minded members of their communities from the countries from which they come, and they then can operate in that manner. And unfortunately, too many of us don't understand the value of being able to do that, because we have bought into a false construct. We have bought into a false narrative. We have bought into a false idea. We keep waiting for our freedom to be bestowed upon us by the colonizer. And here's a news flash. Ain't gonna happen. Because the colonizer, what did Frederick Douglass tell us? Power yields nothing without demand. It never has, and it never will. Cherie, thank you, Dr. Wilmer, for another book to buy. Do you understand what the price of books is today? Cherie, look at what's behind me. Look at what I'm surrounded by. Yeah, I'm surrounded by books. And this is only one small space in my home. Very small space in my home. I do understand. And I also understand, I'm not going to say facetious. I understand I'm drawing a blank on the word I want to use. The funny point that you're making. Do you understand the price of books? Which I would ask, let me see, how much is this book? You can get the book digitally. Are you ready for this? The digital list price. Are you ready for this? $1.99. $1.99. The paperback version is $26. So yes, I do understand, Cherie, the price of, but then I will submit to you, what price freedom? What price knowledge? And wait a minute. I'm getting broadcasts from other sources. What are you telling me here? Okay, I got that. So again, Robert Brown, thank you very much. Cherie, I think that's so funny. Thank you for another book to buy. I hear that all the time. Man, every time I watch your show or every time I listen to your show on Sirius XM, it costs me money because I either have to go out and buy the music that you're playing, or I have to go out and buy a book that you're talking about. Got it. So Daniel, I think I recall from another message that you're a steel worker. And if that is true, can you please briefly tell me, as a steel worker, what you think about the Trump steel tariffs? Come on, Dr. Leon. O.L. Griffin. Come on, Dr. Leon. Most of these, like even the Whig business, have economic support based on nations. O.L. Griffin, that is true. That is true. There are many that come from countries, and in fact, I'm glad you made that point because I got distracted and didn't make that point. I was going to make that point myself. I understand that they come with economic support from either nation states, from nation state agreements. For example, the United States has a standing agreement with the Philippines to provide Filipino nurses, to the United States. Now I know that's not a private business, but I think your point, O.L. Griffin, is quite valid. But O.L. Griffin, that does not mean that as African Americans, we can't start businesses in our own country, that we can't start businesses in our own neighborhood. That doesn't mean that because people from India or people from Taiwan or people from China are coming to this country starting businesses, that doesn't mean that we cannot do it ourselves. We first have to decide that we're going to do it. And then we have to develop the business plan. And we have to figure, there are a lot of hurdles that I understand that, look, I went to business school. I understand this. So I get it, but that doesn't mean we can't do it. What we have to first do is develop the mindset to do it. And then once you develop the mindset to do it, then you start to implement the processes in which you can get that done. Daniel, I am a steel worker in Canada, and the workers are holding their breath here. Explain to me why. Is that because you are expecting that, Daniel? Is that because the steel workers in Canada are expecting there to be a dramatic decrease in Canada exporting steel to the United States? Is that why why your brethren in Canada are holding their breath? I'd like for you to clarify that. So Robert Brown, wait, Daniel. Kevin Baptist asks Daniel, how is your union taking this on? What's the plan? So there you go, Daniel, if you could answer those questions. So how can you tell this? How can you tell the stats from the early 80s? Most small businesses go under in less than 5 years, and successful ones have to be able to have funding for up to 7. Been there, brother. Oh, no, I get it. In fact, again, while I was in business school, I took a class called Business Planning for the Entrepreneur. And you're absolutely right. When you decide to start a business, part of your business plan has to be you have to be prepared to sustain a loss for 7 years. If you don't have the financing behind you to be able to sustain a loss for 7 years, 5 to 7 years, you are going to probably in year 3 or year 4, you're going to find yourself in serious trouble. Again, O.L. Griffin, I understand that. And you're absolutely right. But that does not mean we cannot overcome those challenges. Part of the problem, and I underscore part of the problem, not all, but part of the problem is that a lot of us talk about starting a business, but we don't do the research, the groundwork to first of all understand whether or not the business you want to pursue is viable in the space that you want to start the business. So, for example, one of the things that I learned was that I wish I could find the book, because there's a great book that we had in class called Business Planning for the Entrepreneur. And one of the things that you have to be able to determine is how far away will people come to support your business. That there are very simple calculations, very simple formulas that you can use to determine you use your business as the center of the circle. And then the question becomes, what's the radius going to be? How far away will people come to support your business? And that's a very simple calculation that you can do. But if you don't know the answer to that question, then you aren't asking the types of fundamental questions that need to be answered in order to create a sustainable, viable business. That's why, for example, I don't know if many companies still do this, but I remember when I used to go to Home Depot, for example, the one near my house. Did you all ever notice when you went to a business like a Home Depot, or you went to a Walmart, or what, they would ask you for your zip code? Did you all ever realize, ever experience that? They'd ask you for your zip code as they were checking you out through the checkout stand. And did any of you all ever wonder, why are you asking me for my zip code? The reason is they want to determine from how far away from that store are you traveling to access that store. Because that also then tells them where they need to plan to access the next to build the next store. Because I it's been a while since I've thought about this, so my numbers may be a bit off, but for the sake of example, it's about 3 miles. They figure that the average patron is going to okay, the average patron is only going to travel like 2 to 3 miles to support the business. So if they ask you how far away you're coming, and they see you're coming 4 miles away, well, then that tells them they need to start thinking about building a store 4 miles or 5 miles or 6 miles from that location. So again, O.L. Griffin, exactly. I knew that. Hey, brother, no shade taken. I'm not, and I'm not throwing any your way either. So please, no, this is what I consider to be constructive dialogue. No, you're good. You're cool. We're good. Can't tell you the stats from, we got that. One of your best friends from the Air Force became a steel executive. Oh, okay. And he says this is devastating. If not handled properly, survival will cost them debt. And trust me, OL, you're right. And it's not being handled properly. U.S. steel companies are going, if you're talking about U.S. steel companies, are going to have a serious problem. You also say when U.S.-based suppliers would not work with you, you had to go to Vantage for the phones at, you were in, I think you mentioned earlier that you were in the telecom business, and you had to go to Vantage for the phones at, is it Siemens or Siemens? I think it's Siemens, not Siemens, in Germany for the Prodigy switch inputs. I got you. I used to work for the telecom for one of the Fortune 2 or Fortune 5 telecom companies. So I understand. That's why I know when you said Siemens, I think you're talking about Siemens in Germany. Got it. So look, folks, I apologize for the problems that we had in getting my guest. We'll get that worked out. But sometimes when you're doing live broadcasts, live podcasts, these things happen. I really ask that those of you that can join the Connecting the Dots Club, that can subscribe to the show, please do. And because we greatly need your support, and we do this for you, but we cannot do this without you. So I'm really strongly, and there are those of you that are members. Cherie, I know, is a member. Thank you very much. There are a number of members here that will, I think, validate the point that I'm making, that this is a worthwhile investment, that the information that we provide, the guests that we provide, I'm giving you all access to info that you otherwise either would not get or would have trouble getting through other sources. So we implore you to contribute. We implore you to subscribe to the program, to the podcast. I think that what we do here is an invaluable service. Please subscribe. Please join the Connecting the Dots Club on YouTube. And those of you that are watching on other platforms, Kevin Baptiste, my brother from Oaktown, thank you for that $5 super sticker. Greatly appreciate that. And O.L. Griffin, right after the Baby Bells broke up, you were on a combat crew and studied that stuff while on alert to decide what you were going to do in the Air Force. And O.L. Griffin, greatly appreciate, much respect. I greatly appreciate that. Willie Hicks, been a member, definitely a worthwhile investment. And look, if Willie Hicks says that he's a member and that it's definitely a worthwhile investment, Peggy Miller, thank you for backing that statement. But if Willie Hicks is telling you this, then folks, you need to listen to Willie Hicks, because that's a good, smart brother right there. And you need to check out OPSEC. If you all are interested in firearms training, you need to check out OPSEC LLC if you're in the Maryland area, and you need to take some training from brother Willie Hicks. Oh, look at that. Another $20 super sticker. Thank you, brother Willie Hicks. If I knew that that's what it took, I'd say this about you all day, every day, which I do anyway. But anyway, to all of you all, there you go. That brother right there, good man. And check out OPSEC LLC for those of you that are interested in Willie. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I should know it by heart by now. But yeah, check him out, and because he's the truth. And with that, hey folks, let me tell y'all, really appreciate it. Nico House will be joining us tomorrow. That I guarantee. Thank you all for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast. Stay tuned. New episode tomorrow. Nico House is going to join us. Follow, subscribe. See y'all tomorrow. Until then, I am Wilmer Leon. Have a great remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.